Welcome back to another segment of the Fuel Report. I'm CJ Goder. I'm joined by Mr. Minge here on my right and Tyler Hetherington, the big boss himself, on my left. So we're getting this interview done a little bit of ahead of schedule, and it's not often we get an opportunity to talk to Tyler in this sense where we can really just sink our teeth and ask those questions, get that deep dive, that behind the scenes. But most importantly for us to start off here, just Tyler, how did you get involved in esports? Like, how do you end up here?
Well, I did had a previous career on the radio, and then I joined the Fanshawe Student Union as their event coordinator. So I did all the events on campus. I did that for 6 years, just over 6 years. So every frost show, every drag show, every bingo, every little event that was put on by the Fanshawe Student Union, it was my job to plan, execute, and run those events. And because I didn't like free time, I also proposed esports pretty early into that career. We started Fuel as just like weekly tournaments, and that was kind of my intro. My idea was for us to always get to where we are today and even further when I very first proposed it at the very beginning, but that was kind of my intro. I came from kind of the independent music event side of things, saw esports as something I wanted to do in the future, make sure it's a big thing on campus here, and we're still doing that every day, trying to make it bigger. So that was my intro, just playing it as a kid and playing competitive chell. But other than that, it was being an event planner, seeing that was something that wasn't happening on campus at all. Two of the big things I'm really proud of is the amount of international events that we have now. When I first got the job, we didn't really do a lot of that. And then, of course, building esports to where it is here on campus now.
I guess what I'm really curious from you saying at the start that this was something you were trying to like integrate in all the time, how was that trying to pitch that to others?
It's not easy because when you're pitching esports, the biggest struggle, and it's not their fault, it's a cliff issue of education, is people of a certain age just don't understand it. They don't get it. And honestly, it's not their fault. It's just an education. You have to tell them what it is. You have to educate them on what, it's not guys looking like me sitting in the basement drinking Monsters till 3 a.m. anymore. Sometimes it is, but that's not really what esports is anymore, especially on the competitive side of things. It's just an education of what esports has grown into, what it can be in a couple years, and then getting buy-in from the right people. And that takes time, that takes conversations, it takes events where you have to prove and show. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Now, you talked about you played, a bit of competitive chell. You have this background of an events planner, and you said, you really were a driving force. You wanted esports to get involved. Where did that sort of angle come from for you? You have that event planning background. You've played a bit of chell, but why, you described how there's a bit of a knowledge and education and knowing about esports. Where did yours come from?
Honestly, it came from throwing the events, seeing how big it is, and seeing the awesome community that was built around it. One of the great things about colleges and university life is you get to find your people. We threw a few gaming events, and you just seen people who were like instantly friends, and like roommates became of it. Relationships came out of these small little gaming events, and I was like, all right, if we extrapolate this, if we expand this, if we make this a big focus, imagine the impact we could have on some students. So I knew of gaming, and I wasn't the one that was following all the championships and knowing every game off by heart. It's impossible to know them all. I had a basic knowledge of it. I enjoyed gaming on my own, and then I just saw the potential of it. We just built it to where it is now.
The one part I guess I'm trying to think about is for anyone that's really trying to start like a career into the esports and even maybe a bit more like a position like what you have, where would you recommend them to start off?
I would probably recommend them not to. It is a struggle. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours. Luckily, I was kind of at the beginning of my relationship with my wife, the beginning of making a family, so had the extra time. I stopped doing the radio gig because of how I was trying to get the esports growing, it's a lot of work at first, and it's a lot of advocating. It's a lot of activating students, empowering students, but it's a lot of advocating to your bosses and their bosses and their bosses and other random people on campuses. It's not an easy thing to start, because I've kind of been there from the beginning, I've linked up with a few other people who are kind of in a similar situation in Canada. We now started Esports Canada Post-Secondary, which is a not-for-profit that we have with Esports Canada, and we're helping other programs grow. So we're identifying the other me's around Canada that maybe are working part-time on esports, or our student presidents. We're working with a lot of them to try to get full recognized programs on campuses across Canada. So that's because I've been through this, because a couple other people in Canada have been through this. We kind of bonded together to help other people get there. It's a lot of work. It's not easy. It's not high paying. It's not, you got to really, just like most things in esports, you got to have the love for it. Most people who are going into esports, they're just like, I game. I want to work in it. You got to find those other angles, whether that's behind the mic, behind the camera, whether that's making graphics, whether that's being content creation or social media, or, only the 0.01 actually get paid to play. There's a whole industry around it. And even if you're in health and fitness, if you are in, if you're trying to be an awesome chef, you can find a way in esports if you're ready to angle it and work at it that way. So there is a huge industry, and there's a huge industry that's budding, but you have to be able to do more than just esports. Very few people have a full career in esports, and it's not lasting very long. So you have to have that adaptability where you could be the social media person for a competitive team, but you could also be the social media person for a gas station, or not. Gas station's a terrible example maybe, but for any other kind of social media content that would be needed out there, any other marketing firm or anything like that. So that's what I would tell an esports person right now, is to not focus only on esports, kind of be multifaceted where you can do a couple things. But if your passion's in esports, obviously make that the thing that you're really fighting for.
No, absolutely. We sort of painted this arc of I guess you could say, the development of Fuel, how it's sort of gotten established. Now, the real important mark I kind of want to hammer out here is, you started off with the title of, an events coordinator or something in that ilk, and now you're the Esports Director. So obviously, you've pushed the cart up the hill, you've made that progress, you've had that success. For you, at what moment did you start to realize, like, okay, we're starting to get some traction here, like, we might be able to get this done?
Yeah, when I was, my allotted hours per week was almost all esports, I knew that this was coming. It took some convincing of bosses. It's people that just don't understand, but we just grew so big. The show improve style is kind of a big style that I do. When our events were just like having huge numbers, our Discord having big numbers, just like the amount of students that are involved, whether that's with work study, whether that's with volunteerism, whether that's with completing on playing on the teams, whether that's just coming to the social nights, the community nights that we do, those numbers don't lie. So, we're by far the biggest club, wasn't even close. We have the numbers for events. We have the stream numbers, to compete with what are some of the classical sport numbers as well for their streaming of their games. And, we're way ahead in production. We're way ahead in a lot of ways. And we can, learn some stuff from the classic ways as well. But the numbers just didn't lie. Our program built to a point where the bosses finally said, all right, Kyler, This is your job. This is what you have to do. You're already doing it, but this is your full-time job now. So it was nice. And it's only like a year and 2 months that's happened. Like, it was not that last January, but the January before. So it's still pretty early, but it was a great investment, and it's a great check mark by the Fanshawe Student Union to do that. And we just keep growing every day.
And I mean, thinking about that growing aspect side, there's a lot of it for parents that I would look around that, maybe they don't have enough knowledge around it, or there's just not enough information provided for them to maybe understand what really esports is all about. Because there's a lot of times talking to some of the parents, they're like, what is my kid playing? What team is he on? And I guess just thinking, like, for you being like a parent as well, where, like, do you think, like, what do you kind of provide or recommend to parents to try to give them a bit more knowledge on what this is all about?
Yeah, and a lot of that is just, again, that education and just generational gaps where, people who grew up with zero gaming have kids who are doing nothing but gaming, and, they're screaming in their rooms and they're whatever. So when we have open houses, or when we have new students who are bringing their parents to see the room or to talk about the program, I quite often send the kid into the room and I talk to the parents in the hallway. And it's just about finding what that parent did growing up that I could relate this to. When younger people, they used to meet at certain person's house, and they had all the bikes in front of the house. Well, that's what Discord and that's what gaming is like now. You go online on Discord and you see 80 of your friends with their bikes parked in one chat room, and you join that chat room to see your friends. That's just the way it is now. And most parents, I can find something that I can try to relate it to, but you got to support your kids no matter what they're into. And if they're into gaming and, there's a career they could get out of that. But not only that, if there's just an opportunity for them to find their lifelong friends. There's a lot of people out there who are, their best friends are online. And sometimes they live in the same city and sometimes they live across the world. You're not going to find those people unless you're supported, and you can find those people. And that's one of the great things about our program. That's one of the great things I talk to students and family about is this is where they're going to find their long-term friends. Most students who maybe had or parents who had an education, they went and they joined a club. They joined, a debate club. They joined a basketball club. They joined a volunteerism club. And that's where they found their friends. So it's easy to explain, this fuel is where they'll find their lifelong friends. So that's the way I put it to parents.
Well, we mentioned the parental stuff, and you've told us just how much of an investment time-wise it is and how much you've put into it. You're also a father of 2 kids. How has that been? How's that work-life balance been?
I got to thank the FSU with that, where they kind of give me, the rope to kind of make my own hours. So luckily, a lot of, this goes against what I said earlier, but a lot of gaming happens late at night. And my kids are luckily on a great routine where they are out by 8 o'clock every evening. So some of the games have started, but a lot of the community stuff happens kind of 7 p.m. and later. So I can come in during the day, do my office work, do whatever needs to happen. I can go home, pick my kid up every day. It's amazing that I'm able to do that. My wife works till 5 or 6:30, so it's amazing that I can meet him at the bus stop for 3 and kind of have that 3-4 hours of family life. And then I can check on the phone and check on the computer and get into Discord and get into whatever is happening that night. So I thank the FSU where they kind of give me that rope. And I think it's important for someone who's in my position to be able, because there's some people that have this job in the States or other places, and it's 110 hours a week. It's nonstop. You need to be able to touch grass. You need to be able to breathe. I'm lucky I have the kids who they make me get away from the Discord and from the gaming world because they need their dad, and I want to be there with them. And, I'm playing road hockey all day yesterday. So stuff like that, that's important because you can't have, your mind always on work. It's just impossible. You have to have those mental breaks, and they help me as much as I help them with that. So.
No, absolutely. And I just have a follow-up question for that. I know Min's is sitting there burning to have a follow-up, but I'm going to forget about this one if I don't get it out there. I would consider you a bit of a trailblazer in Canada when it comes to pushing esports forward. It's not that you're just the esports director here. You're greatly involved in Esports Canada, which you've talked about earlier. Now, I know personally, my dad loves restoring arcade games. I grew up in a household where it's okay for me to love video games. It's okay for me to talk about it. Have you ever had that perspective where it's 10 years from now, you're probably going to be the cool dad, you know what I mean? The esports director involved, you have that education, you have that knowledge. Does that ever cross your mind?
Not yet, because they're so young, so it hasn't quite happened yet. They're 4 and 2, so that doesn't quite happen. But I'm the cool uncle. I'm the oldest of 8, so there's a lot of nieces and nephews, and when they find out what I do, you can see it in their eyes. And then we have some younger people in the neighborhood that kind of live close, and as soon as I mention what I do, they're like, "Oh, man, this is so cool." So it's. To the people that get it, it's awesome and it's cool, but there's still a lot of people where I say what they do and they're like, "What?" And I'm just like, all right, well, I know there's a block there. It's just not going to be able to explain it. But the easiest way is just to say, what a track and field coordinator would run, because there's so many different teams, so many different ways of playing. That's kind of the easiest way I've said it to some people. But hey, I'd love to be the cool dad. I hope so. Our house is going to be the house where kids can come and hang out. I grew up in that kind of household where our house was the cool house, and or at least the house that it was acceptable for everybody to go to. So that'll be our house. And if they're coming over to game, that's fantastic. And if not, if they're coming over to play whatever, that's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about that, things like gaming being acceptable, and even for you growing up, was it very much acceptable for?
Of course not. Yeah, again, we talk about this generational gap. I'm in a weird spot where my age, where people older than me just don't get none of it. People that younger than me, it was their entire lives. They've had YouTube their entire lives. They've had computers in their house their entire lives. I'm kind of in the middle there where, you know, I was making sites on GeoCities or Angel Fire or these old crazy sites that you guys shouldn't understand. But I was there for MySpace. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So it wasn't accepted at all. But I did have parents that supported it, and they let me have the gaming units and everything. So I was the older brother who gave my younger brother the broken controller, but said he was playing with me. Like that's how I grew up. But it's, you know, it is what it is. But again, that's going to come with education. That's going to come with people acceptance, people understanding the industry that this is, and the positives to gaming, because there was a lot of negative tones around it. It's just what happens. And there's a lot of negative tones around a lot of things in the world. And once people get more educated, they understand things a little bit more, that gets accepted more. Gaming's no different.
I got to dive into this one though. Your favorite game?
Well, it's not very esporty. That's the problem. Is like I'm a big Fallout stan, so you know, I play Fallout quite a bit. Actually, just started 3 again very recently. I'm excited for Starfield. We finally have a date. You know, I like Mass Effect, I like space, I like Star Trek and Star Wars and stuff. So, you know, you give me Fallout and space and I'm all in. So, you know, Starfield comes out, I'm going to be... Now, the real problem, do you know the date? It's like September 6th, September 12th.
Oh.
It's like, I'm going to be busy. No. This is the work. Give it to me at the start of summer. They're going to have the whole summer to do it? No, so... don't DM me much in September is basically what even though it's a really important time. But yeah, so I'm a Fallout guy. You know, 3, 4, New Vegas, not so much 76, just because of the time commitment. But yeah, Fallout's my favorite game.
You know, there's just, and you know what, I love how, for example, TFT, not necessarily an esport, but we run events like that. And I feel like that's something we've done a great job at Fuel with, is just, you know, for example, Veronica behind the desk, Radish, like Sims, for example. There's a slew of games out there that you can't necessarily compete in. Avenue-wise, going forward in Fuel, are there any thoughts to try and integrate more of those community nights, try and expand the demographic outside of the prototypical esports? Now, I know we do Apex tournaments, we do bits and pieces, but casting has kind of been sort of our main bread and butter at Fuel, and playing the games and our community nights. What else is in mind going forward in the future for Fuel?
So a lot of that, you just need room to do those things. You need to have the interest for those things. So, you know, we're not at a level where we're recruiting students. So I made sure that we focus on the production and on the casting side. We finally got the room. It has space. It doesn't have enough space. So we're going to work on that. The casual gaming is just as important, if not more important, than our competitive gaming. You know. And this is kind of breaking some walls, but like if you have 100 competitive players, but you have 2,000 community players who just play casual games on a campus life, those 2,000 are more important than the 100. The 100 are doing amazing work and they're competing, and like I'm not taking away from any of that. That's not what I'm saying. So don't get me wrong there. But you have to look at the whole community, and the whole community is just as important, and that's why we have those switches in there in the games room. You know, we do need to have more casual gaming in there, but the problem with a lot of those games is you save on your hard drives. A lot of those casual games, I'd love to have Animal Crossings. I'd love to have, you know, those kind of games in there. But the problem is you just save files on your system. So it's tough to do that, because then you'd just be playing the intro over and over again, right? So, you know, we would love to do more of those nights, and some of that's going to come with more support. So right now, I am the only person that's a non-student person that's involved with Fuel. So every other employee is a work-study student that has a full work life, maybe a second job, other hobbies, other games that they like to play. So more support and more staff will lead to more community nights. I'd love to do them every week, but it's just we're kind of capped at numbers wise right now. So it's a big part of our focus moving forward. Maybe as we expand, it can be something that we include a lot more, and I hope it is, because even like NHL night, 2K nights, those kind of simple game nights, they're easy to do. It's just we need the numbers. So that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
No, absolutely. Well, before we wrap things up, you know, my last question is production based.
Okay.
You know, we started off mainly virtual, and we've sort of just been creeping up the ladder. But you know what? Ultimately, I'm a caster for Fuel. I watch a lot of VODs from other schools when I can find them, and it just feels like you've been part of developing such a nice, polished product. And it's not even that it's polished. It's not like we're happy with this. We're pushing it forward. We're extending. We're advancing. For you, how do you maintain that hunger of just let's keep driving this rock uphill?
Yeah, I love the get 1% better every day kind of type of mentality where you're like, what can I improve today and what's my main focus? What can we do? And even getting involved with Esports Canada, like it's making the scene across Canada better, but that also makes us better. If there's more programs across Canada that are supported, it's just going to only elevate us more and more. And then programs like St. Clair, for example, Conestoga this year, becoming a ginormous program, those help us push as well because you want to try to get to that level. But production-wise, I got to send a big shout-out to Apollo and everybody who's been involved. We've fully activated him in a big way, and I've challenged him quite a bit, and I challenge everybody, I think, a little bit. But certain people, you can push a little more. Our production, I'd put it up against any, there's some productions in the States where it's $1 million studios and, like, the amount of money and work they put into that. I'm like, look at our streams. Come on, we're topping your streams. I'm very proud of where we've been, and again, that was on purpose focus. So even without Apollo here, and Apollo's amazing, and I owe him so much, that would still be a huge focus of ours. We got super lucky that we have an Apollo around. Now with the cycle of students, eventually Apollo's going to have to work his way into training somebody else, unless we can hire him. That's what we're hoping for. The production side is just a huge focus while we could focus on production. If we can say, once we get to the ability to do fully recruiting students, if we ever get to that part, we can already say our production good, our room good eventually. We can, start knocking some of those pillars down and really activating them to the fullest. And the fact that production is something that we can get to where it is now and still improve every day, that's huge. And it's not slowing down. We're getting better every day on that.
Yeah, well, based off that answer, I got to ask one more follow-up question now.
It's all good.
Student turnover, you know what I mean? Because we have 1-year programs here. We have 2-year programs. We also have 3-year programs. Sometimes a student's going to come back and do an extra year. It's kind of difficult because you don't know your staff rotating year in and year out. And in a casting sort of sense, for example, you build a repertoire with your co-casters. You build a dynamic. You get used to it. What's it like, knowing going into each year? I guess it's a typical post-secondary thing you do it with sports, but you have a turnaround. You need to be able to pump in new casters, which means you need to make it known those positions are going to become available. It's an option because, for example, a lot of us, I did my first stream last year. I wasn't an actual caster, but I filled in. Min's got in on the ground floor, and it's just a lot of us, the Discord existed. I just interviewed Wishy the other day, and she's like, I saw it on the Discord. It's a great opportunity, but it's like, how do you really manage ensuring not only do you have the employees filling that turnover, but you're getting the right ones?
Now, my years of working as an event coordinator on campus really helps that. I think I can read students pretty well. And in an interview, I could usually tell within 5 minutes if that person's gonna be a part of my plan in the future. And just the way we activate certain students in a certain way, I think most students, we can see what their strengths are, and then we'll activate that strength as much as we can. And with casters, that's easy. Put a mic in front of you, keep you going. If someone shows more interest in observing and production, then we get them all involved. There's not a lot of no's around Fuel. It's someone says, "Hey, I want to do this. That's what this is, right? This whole Fuel report. Like, you guys want to do this? Great. Let's go. Let's do this. Yes." Some of that comes from trial and error. Some of that comes from just like a student background that I have where, we can support the right students and get them to really excel as much as we can. But the college turnover is real. It's tough. And again, thankfully I had 6 years of having to have an event crew roll over every year. My hype squad in my previous career, hype squad, people who help me out with events, people who set up, tear down, the people who work in the kitchens, all that rotates every other year. So it's kind of part of the growth of things on campus. Universities are a little bit luckier because they got those 4, 5, 6-year programs where you can get a little bit more comfy. But Fuel's going to be here to support those students that come in, and luckily we've built it to a way like kids are contacting me saying, I'm going to be a Fanshawe caster in 2 years when I graduate high school. Like, that's a cool message to get. And it's not just from London high schools either. Like, we'll have a kid who up in Toronto is like, I'm going to go to Fanshawe and that's where I'm going to go casting. That's where I'm going to start my career. I'm like, that's really cool. Yeah, keep watching the streams. So stuff like that's where the goosebumps comes from, and stuff like that's where like you can hopefully advance some students. But yeah, that's I don't know if that answered your question, but
it did.
Yeah, it did. I mean, kind of going back, you were saying to the ground floor thing with me. I guess another interesting thing was even before I started the program, I saw the Discord server, and it like didn't have that much of an advertisement spot for it. It was like, I think in this little hidden spot on like
the right students are going to find that spot.
And I found it for some reason. I joined on, and it was actually you, Tyler, that messaged me first on the server and like was welcoming me and like talking to me a little bit, and it was really nice. And like I started to notice that there's this whole open world of all these other gamers that I can meet now at Fanshawe. And since like even just me seeing it as well, from now all these teams are getting together, all this stuff is coming together, I'm just curious, like, how does this actually make you feel seeing these teams and these players being able to collaborate?
We have a fuel house. Like the whole R6 team all lives together except for one player. Like, that's amazing. And you know, people my age, one of the things I hear a lot is, where was this when I was a student? Because, you know, you had to find your Halo friends or your whatever friends otherwise. But to have it all on campus and just to sit beside a student that literally is dealing with all the same issues you are, because you're in the same year or you're a student as well, second year, and you can talk to a first year and kind of give them advice. It's just, it's really cool the way the students kind of come together. And you guys might notice at times I'll be like, over here, focus on students, don't involve me in this. Like, this should all be student led, and that's on purpose. Because when a student comes into the fuel station, for example, if I'm behind the desk, it's a different interaction. It's still an interaction that I enjoy, and it's still an interaction hopefully that student will enjoy. But when it's a fellow student, it's a different interaction. When you're sitting down beside another student and you're just like, what program you in? You know, that's beautiful, that's amazing. And I got to experience that through events. I got to experience that through the Frost shows, through comedy, where people would find their friends, people would find their relationships. I know people that have gotten married that met while working on, you know, the event crew. Extrapolate this, and that's going to happen. We already have a 4-year relationship that's come out of Fuel, so that stuff's going to happen the more this gets supported and the more it grows and the more we support the students in the right way. But that's beautiful. That's what college is for. That's what university is for. That's what that time's for. And it's awesome that we can do it through gaming and, you know, get you away from your studies and your pressures that students have. And that's what's so great about the whole Fuel program.
You know what? I wanted to add on to that and highlight a little more, because that's exactly it. You know, we've talked a lot about the development of esports itself here, you know, building all video game related. But if we just take a step back for a second, it's not just an esports room that's been built. It really truly is. It's a community. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's a safe space. And, you know, I was talking with Wishy about this the other day. It's a space, and it's not just a safe space, LGBTQ, woman, everybody. It's just a uniquely safe space where you can meet friends, you can meet people in other communities. There's great overlap. And in lieu with that, it's like, I would say for myself, you know, we're here on the Fuel Report, the student union, the school. They give us all the opportunity to sort of push the envelope if we want to. And I'm just glad to say they gave you the same opportunity as well, because now we're all here as well. But just seeing not only the growth and boom of esports, but the actual community as well. Because, you know, it's one thing to, Night Flash, for example, I don't play any games Night Flash plays, but we do work together. You know, you have that community feeling. I'd go grab a beer with Night Flash, have before, and just making those connections. And that's the thing. We might only be here for a year or two, but what you're building can supersede that year or two. You know what I mean? You're helping forge connections that can go long beyond the fuel room, but we'll always have that base memory of where these things started. So I guess it's important to note to you that you're a part of all of that.
No, that's amazing to hear. That's exactly what it's here for. So in a lot of meetings that I'm in with like college people or other people, I very rarely mention gaming. It's all about the community building. It's all about the people, how you're going to activate students. You know, students come in and they're the shy, you know, especially ones that maybe weren't supported or they didn't live in a big city. They come from a spot where they were kind of coddled, or they were kind of like only in the room, their only friends were online. When they come into that room and they just become captains of teams, they find their social lives through the Fuel program. That's literally the point. And you know, for all the soft skills that you can say that classic sports teach you, you can learn them all in esports as well. Again, very rarely am I talking about the gaming. I'm talking about the community that's built around it, the friendships, the way people grow into humans and successful students, as well as successful adults, is just amazing. That's the whole point. It's great.
It really is.
Okay. Well, on that note, after a quick shout out to Fuel and all your work, Tyler, I'm CJ
Wait,
Goder.
one sec. Mins is almost finished with us, so we got to give Mins some shine. Thank you for everything that you've done, buddy, for the program. You're about to be here, graduating, get out of here. And again, one of the success stories. So thanks, Mins, for everything, and you guys for doing this. So you can get back to your outro. Just
No worries.
interrupted
No worries.
there.
Thank you, Tyler.
You know, the prod team always likes to hide behind their little production booth. But yes, thanks to Mins, and as Apollo knows, since he hates when we bring him up, thanks to Apollo's as well for all the great work he's done on the Fuel Report, as he's the one that'll be stringing this together later for us. But on that note, we'll be back with another segment of the... We're just going to cut that. We'll be back for another segment of the Fuel Report after this. I'm CJ Goder. Thanks to Mins and our Esports Director, Tyler Hetherington, for joining us. And we'll be back with you in one moment.